Hello, everyone, and welcome. And thank you for tuning in to Health Leaders, the place for peer sourced and solution focused insights for healthcare executives. My name is G. Hatfield, and I'm the nursing editor for Health Leaders. Today, we're talking to Chaudron Carter, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Nurse Executive at Temple Health, about the recent nursing strikes and union activity going on across the country. So, hi, Chaudron, how are you?
I am well. How's everyone doing today? And happy to be here.
Yeah, great. Thank you for taking the time to do this. So let's jump right in. Can you tell me about how Temple averted a strike?
So sure. So Temple, our main campus, is the larger campus of all of our satellite campuses, with the largest workforce of nurses, about 1,600 nurses. And so um, we started our strike preparation or negotiations, if you will, sometime last summer. And we began to negotiate in September with a collective bargaining agreement that ended September 29th or September
Mhm,
30th. And so as we were negotiating, many of our conversations were far apart, if you will,
mhm,
and um, staffing was a large issue on the table. And so we, as an organization, knew that that potentially could be an item for our staff to want to strike for.
mhm,
And in order for us to avert a strike, what we did is had conversations with the union and set aside different times that the staff and the leaders of different areas could sit down and look at staffing and
mhm,
adjust staffing based on acuity and many other criterias. The ICUs did it based on, the acuity of their patients. The med surg units did it based on, different variations of patients that land on their floors. And so
mhm,
that is how we essentially averted a strike by really just getting together and agreeing to some changes in our staffing guidelines. And we don't have staffing ratios, we have guidelines.
mhm,
And we have a process by which we look at those guidelines monthly, and if adjustments needs to be made, we have partnered on looking at what adjustments may need to be made monthly, and or no adjustments at all. And that's
mhm.
kind of really how we averted a strike.
Interesting. So, have the guidelines that you implemented worked? Like, did that address the problem?
So the guidelines are a work in progress. And, there's
Mhm,
a nursing shortage across the nation.
mhm,
And so we're trying to meet the guidelines as much as we can. We're headed in a great direction
mhm,
by meeting the guidelines and the challenges that's set forth by staffing, nursing shortages, if you will. But we meet monthly. We talk about where we are. We provide the union with those that we've hired through the month. So every month we're looking at every unit and where they are as it relates to the guidelines.
mhm. Interesting. So, what do you think are some key tips that other CNOs could use for dealing with nursing unions in these kinds of situations?
I One is really communication. It is really
Mhm,
being out there, and it's really hard to do as a chief nurse executive. Really being on the floors and being out there and listening and talking to your staff.
mhm,
Um, but it is imperative because you get to hear some of the concerns for those individual organizations that are really embarking on um, contract negotiations. You get to hear what are the hot topics, and if you could develop a strategy before you get to go into negotiations around what those topics may be, and the organization develop a strategy on how to combat those uh, issues,
mhm,
I think you'll position the organization better as it
Mhm.
relates to going into negotiations and averting a strike.
Absolutely. So, how can other health systems learn from what Temple did?
I think we have a lot of experience with union and union
Mhm.
organization. I mean, all of our campus are essentially unionized. It's 7 campuses, and we're all unions.
Mhm.
Different union, different contracts, and so I think we have experience. We tend to try to have um, some transparency as it relates to the union
Mhm.
and us as leaders, and really keeping that dialogue open. It's not always We don't always see eye to eye.
Mhm.
um, but there are times where we kind of agree on certain things, and developing that the trusting relationship that we're here for the same reason. We're here
Mhm.
for safe patient care. We're here to make sure that the staff is um, taken care of as well. And so when we may go about those two issues differently,
Mhm.
but they're the two issues at the forefront. And I think making sure that we continue to stay there.
Mhm.
They're the high. They are those two items are our priorities. Um, and so when we lead with that, many times the conversations and the tension that many times are built up around these conversations, it kind of is dulled a little bit, if you will.
Mhm. Interesting. So, how do you have any tips for CNOs to kind of help open up those lines of communication and transparency?
Yeah, I mean, I think having set aside some allotted time
Mhm.
with the union and the executive boards of the unions to kind of have these conversations and really develop what we do here at Temple. We have a shared agenda, and so
Mhm.
each month we meet for 8 hours, 4 hours on just topics,
Mhm.
and that's a shared agenda, and then 4 hours on staffing and scheduling, looking at the guidelines, looking at units. The units are the units are required to come and prepare a presentation about their units, about their quality, so
Mhm.
that it's a shared responsibility between the leader and the staff. It's not just that we provide you with staffing and that's it. You have a responsibility to make sure that the quality is in line with what the health system dictates as a benchmark. And so we can't just give you staffing and you not have onus to some of these quality initiatives. So the staff presents monthly, and it's different units that
Mhm.
presents monthly. They talk about their quality, they talk about their staffing, they talk about any areas of concern that we need to be aware of.
Mhm.
um, and so we have 4 hours about units, and we pick 2 units a month, and then the other 4 hours, we as our shared agenda, leadership talks about agenda items, and so does the union. And I think that works for us.
Mhm.
Having that open communication, having set aside time that's dedicated to these items,
Mhm.
and really talking through them. Again, we don't always agree on many of them, but we agree to disagree.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It's all about communication. It's healthcare is a team sport, is something that I heard from another CNO recently, and that really resonated.
it definitely is a team sport, and we need each other. So
Mhm.
even though we are a unionized organization, we need our staff to really provide safe patient care. And how
Mhm.
do we do that? We need to make sure that they are um, part of the solution.
Mhm.
Because it can't
Absolutely.
always be the leaders. They need to be part of our conversation on how do we drive change in an organization, and they need to be at the hem of the table. That's all part of shared governance. We are a
Mhm.
magnet organization, and this is part of why we have these conversations. Because if it's part of, you know, we can make decisions. Leadership can make decisions,
Mhm.
However, if it is not the right decision to drive the change that we want, it won't work. So
Mhm.
that's why you need the nursing staff at the table to have these conversations and drive the changes that we would like to make.
Absolutely. So, would you recommend having a plan in place for dealing with potential strike activity? And if so, what would that kind of look like?
Absolutely. Any organization that's embarking on a contract negotiation should have a contingency operations plan.
Mhm.
Most organizations that are unionized know what it is, and it is based on if there is a strike, how can you continue operations? And
Mhm.
that is from um, dietary, it is housekeeping, it is radiology.
Mhm.
How do we continue to um, operate as normal or some resemblance as normal when the nurses go out on strike?
Mhm.
That is hiring an agency to bring in a contingency workforce. So the plan is huge
Mhm.
because nursing touches all aspect of an organization, and so you have to think of the most minute things to the larger scale items.
Mhm.
How can you um, you know instead of having five med surg units, how can you collate them into two or three?
Mhm.
What areas can you downsize in to continue to still provide the same quality of care to the patients that are coming in your doors? So that contingency plan is an operations plan that mitigates any issues around continuing operations as it relates to a strike.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for your time, Chaudron. I'm really grateful to have had this opportunity to hear your insights and to get to know you a little bit. And thank you so much to our audience for listening.
And thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.